First of all, thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate your time. I know how busy everyone is, or perhaps isn't at the moment. And that's partially what we'll be talking about today, really, which is the kind of the role of interims, how the world of work is changing, how the transition from basic full-time CMO type roles is moving much more to a more fluid environment where we have a lot of people working in the contract interim space. This is part of a larger series of events that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. We've got an event coming up in June entitled "Is the Role of the CMO, or are CMOs no longer required," as it were? And we've got views on that. So today is a session that will basically talk to you about actually how you go about setting yourself up as an interim, the processes you need to go through, but also for those that are regular and seasoned interims, it'll be a good opportunity for you to kind of remind yourself of some of the things that one has to be aware of. The session today will be led by a gentleman who's got a significant amount of experience in this particular field, and is a former CMO himself, David Moore. He's worked both as an interim CMO, marketing director for nearly 18 years, with assignments across a very broad range of different businesses, like B&Q, Eon, RBS, Direct Line Group, 118, Screwfix, and many more. And he's really, I guess, his positioning these days is a serial launcher. What he likes to do is help drive business growth by launching and relaunching B2C and B2B brands across all the various different integrated channels. Since he's launched this development program, which he calls the Interim Development Program in 23, David has worked with over 60 senior executives across diverse sectors and functions in creating a tailored strategy on their approach to access interim assignments. So hopefully his words of wisdom will land well with you today. This is very much a introduction into the work he does. I think we can all benefit from it. And if anybody is interested in actually learning any more, then obviously at the end of today's session, we will share with you contact details and you can then pick up with David direct. The presentation is about 35, 40 minutes long, and then there'll be hopefully 10 or 15 minutes to ask questions at the end, if that's okay. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over. Tracy, if you could put David in the limelight and squeeze me away somewhere, that would be wonderful.
Thanks, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with you. Bear with me for a moment. Okay. Can somebody just nod, Teresa, if you can see that? Yeah, good. Okay, good to go. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Let me just give you a little bit more background on me. Stephen's given an overview, a little bit of background, and I'll go into the presentation proper. I ran a promotional marketing agency in the West End of London for 15 years, and we had some fairly decent clients, as you can see on the screen there. So we started as a promotional marketing agency, became an integrated agency, and then I sold that after running it for 15 years or so. Having completed the trade sale, I wasn't able to work on the agency side any longer because of my non-compete clauses. Didn't really want to go onto the dark side and become a client that early. So I was considering what to do, and I was contacted by an old client of mine. He used to be marketing manager at Mars, and he moved to 118. And he said, "Come on, David, you're not doing anything. You launch stuff, you launch new brands, you launch campaigns, relaunch brands. Come and help me launch 118." So I said, "Yeah, I do that for a while." And I was there for about 10 months, and we launched it into B2C and B2B. You probably remember the two runners. That was our initial advertising campaign, and it did very well, got 40% market share. So that was really my first assignment, and therefore I really moved into interim by accident. But it wasn't long before I was then able to create an interim proposition for myself. And as Stephen said, as a serial launcher, I launch new brands, I relaunch existing brands, and I've been lucky enough to work across a variety of sectors. I am sector agnostic. I've worked in utilities and retail and banking, and I've even worked in fashion, which was an experience. Then coming out of coming out of COVID, a lot of people were asking me about the interim market itself, and I think they've been reconsidering their career while they were working at home during COVID. And a lot of people saying, well, how do you get into the market? Because I'm sending out emails and I've got CVs like confetti, and I'm registering on sites. I'm not getting anywhere. So they were approaching it in the wrong way. So I put together the program about a year ago, launched it at the end of February last year, and I launched it, soft launched it on LinkedIn, and it was very well received. So yeah, I've had over 60 senior execs, mainly C-suite board and board minus one, go through the program, all sectors, all functions, not just marketing, right the way across the functions. So from many different sectors as well. So the program itself is designed both for people who are new, executives are new into the interim sector, and those that are established interims that need a fresh approach, if you like, a new position, a new strategy in the market, to deeper their penetration into the market. The bottom line of it is that it's a program designed to secure assignments, profitable assignments, both fractional and interim. And you're probably aware that the F word, fractional, has become very popular over the past 12 months. So fractional being what used to be called part-time, it's now got a sexy title, and interim being full-time, 5 days a week over the term of the assignment. So the program itself is based on a very simple marketing principle of targeting the right message. So the right messaging to the right targets. And that messaging is, and I'll go through these in a bit more detail later, but that messaging is the interim title or descriptor. I'll explain that later. Interim proposition and personal brand. Interim CV has to be a different CV for the interim market than the permanent market. And LinkedIn, the showcase for us. And then targeting that message to the interim service providers like Pimento, one's own personal network, and then the LinkedIn community. So the right messaging to those right targets. The program itself, the full program, it's 3 one-hour sessions. It's run over about an hour and a half, and I spread it over 2 or 3 weeks because there's quite a lot of information to get through to sort of synthesize that information, and there's also some homework between each of the sessions. So it is tailored to the individual client. It's done on a one-to-one basis, not a big group of people, and it has 9 elements to it. And those 9 elements really chunk up into 3 parts. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. The first session is understanding the market. We're going to penetrate a market. We're going to launch into a market. We've got to understand it. So I look at an analysis of the interim market. I look at the ISP sector as well, the interim service providers. So using that research, that directs us in terms of the messaging. So the next session is about messaging. It's about the drafting of the interim proposition, the drafting of the personal brand. It looks at the interim CV structure, very different style of CV for the interim sector rather than the permanent sector. We also look at the commercials, so day rate calculations and a profitability plan, and then set out requirements. And then in the third and last session, it's about targeting. So we use the ISP database, we develop that into a personalized CRM tool. We look at the role of LinkedIn in terms of targeting our messages there. And then we finish on a strategic marketing plan, which is for the 3 channels: ISPs, personal network, and LinkedIn. So what I'm going to do today is spend the next sort of 40 minutes or so shallow diving into those 9 areas that I've just had up on the screen. Can't do it all, obviously. I'm just going to pick out some of the areas we cover. So I hope that during this next 40 minutes, I'm going to show you ways, some do's and don'ts, if you like, in the market. So ways of securing those profitable assignments. And then mistakes that some make when we're entering the market, and I made when I entered the market 18 years ago. So I'm going to pull those out as we go. It's about 40 minutes, and then we're going to have some Q&A at the end, and I'll try and answer any questions you have. So if you'd like to put those questions either into the chat room, I'm sure Teresa will pick those up, but I'll answer those at the end of the session if I may. Okay, let's start off with number one then, which is an analysis of the interim market. I use quite a lot of research here, try not to make it too dry. I'm trying to pull out the learnings from the research. This research comes from the Institute of Interim Managers, from the Interim Managers Association, the International Interim Managers Association, and a lot of the ISPs that I work with. I go onto a lot of their webinars. And of course, the qual research, if you like, is my 18 years as an interim across 17 different assignments. And what we're trying to do there is pull out those learnings from that research that helps us develop the interim proposition. There's one thing you take away from this today, it's the interim proposition, how important that is. And the interim proposition is about what you do. It's about your functions, your sector, your experiences, and so on. I'm sure that Stephen and team won't mind me quoting from a competitor, but this is NSCG, used to be called Interim Partners. They're the largest ISP by market share and the number one in the Institute of Interim Managers ranking. And they say, without a clear and compelling interim proposition, you will struggle to secure an interim assignment. And I agree with them. This is absolutely right. Interim proposition is really important. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second. This research also helps us develop your personal brand as well. This is about not what you do, this is about who you are. This is about your soft skills. This is about your management style. And the reason that we have a personal brand is that most of us are overqualified for the assignments we take on. So the client who's looking through the CV or the interim proposition says, yeah, this guy could do it standing on his head. He can tick every box for us. But can he get on with a team? Can he lead a team? Can he get on with his peer group? What's he like in front of the board? So this personal brand talks about you as a person rather than what you do functionally. And that research also helps us with the development of the interim CV. As I say, it's totally different from the permanent CV. In the full program, we look at quite a bit of analysis of the market, and we look at where the assignments come from, by function, by sector, by management style, level, business type. We look at the aims and objectives of assignments, what to expect when you're on assignment, and also the process of getting an assignment from briefing your interim service provider like Pimento all the way through to starting on assignment. So let's start off at 35,000 feet then and take an overview of the market. Most of us are between 40 and 60 years of age. We've sort of been around the block a bit. Average age is 51. What's interesting is that the younger people coming into the market, these youngsters are sort of 30 plus, they're coming into the market. It's up 50% year on year, which is quite extraordinary. So this average experience is going to come down. But yeah, average experience 9 years in interim. A quarter of us about 1 to 4 years. So I think there is people who are in interim have been in it for some time, if you like, and then you've got this new dynamic of the 30-somethings coming in. And I think that even if you haven't the experience within interim, experience with big brands and businesses can sort of compensate for that, maybe a lack of direct experience in interim. The reasons for transition from permanent to interim, this is from the people I've been speaking to, about 100 over the last year, 65 of which have taken the program. Most of them want to have more control over their time. That is to say, I want to control my time. I don't want my work controlling my time. I want a better work-life balance. Some of them are saying, well, I've got to the point, I'm on the board maybe, I'm C-suite, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve in my corporate career, and actually I've had enough of politics. And the beauty of being an interim is that you don't get involved in company politics. You can ask the difficult questions, you can throw the odd hand grenade in every now and then and not worry too much about the shrapnel coming at you. And then the fourth reason is the variety of work. So you can see with my interim career, I've worked across 17 different clients in many different sectors. So that variety is something which is also quite attractive for people moving into the interim world. As marketeers, let's chunk up the market. Let's look at where the assignments come from by channel. So over half of the assignments, 52% of assignments come through the ISP sector, the interim service providers like Pimento. So that's a big part of the market. We've got to understand how to work with them. One's own personal network accounts for 40% of assignments, and LinkedIn, only 8%. And that includes being found. So in fact, only 4% of assignments are ever advertised on LinkedIn, only 4%. And I get a lot of people saying, you know, I'm spending all my time on LinkedIn and I can't find the assignment. Yeah, well, you're looking in the wrong place. That's not where they are. And the difficulty is that with the dynamics of that market, 52% ISP and 40% personal network, the assignments are invisible. They don't get advertised, they don't get publicized. So we have to make ourselves visible to those three channels to access the invisible assignment. So that there's a learning there. You know, we don't search for assignments on LinkedIn. It's the place to be found rather than finding an assignment. Let's look at come down from 35,000 feet into a bit more granular. Let's look at assignment roles and needs. And the chart on the right hand side, that green line across the top, 28.7% of assignments are about transformation. If you look at needs, not sure quite the difference between roles and needs, but nevertheless, the needs dominated by business change and transformation, 39%. You can add actually the next one down on that, which is project management. And I think that's managing change. So I can lump those together. So 55% of assignments are about business change and transformation. So clearly we need to focus on brand transformation. That's what I do. I relaunch brands. Or it could be transformation in HR or supply chain or finance, but we need to focus on transformation and change in drafting our interim proposition and our interim CV. So when interim first came into the UK, I'm going to say 20 years ago, it was actually a Dutch concept to get around the employment laws over there. And when it first came in, it was all about gap assignments. It was maternity cover. It was, you know, I've lost my CMO. It's going to take me 9 months to recruit another one. The gap assignments have reduced significantly, particularly over the last 5 to 10 years. In fact, only in the last year, gap assignments have come down from 18% to 8% of total assignments. If you look at the research from Boyden, some of you will know Boyden, quite a large ISP. They did some research about a couple of months, 3 months ago, and they looked at what are the drivers for assignments during the course of last year. And if you look at BAU, that's only 6% of assignments were maintenance, gap assignments, if you like. Transformation and turnaround, 53%. Change and growth, 39%. So you've got 90% of assignments are around transformation, turnaround, business change, and growth. So clearly that's the language of interim. Again, clear direction for when we're drafting the interim proposition and your CV. I'm sure you've all worked in transformation programs. What we need to do is just shine a light on that when we're redrafting the interim CV, because that's the rationale for businesses taking on interims. So number two is the ISPs like Pimento. That's the interim service providers. When I started 18 years ago, there was Odgers and then maybe another dozen, and that was it. There are 164 ISPs in the marketplace. Some of them are pure interim, some of them are executive search that have expanded into the interim market. But yeah, the ISPs, 160 plus of them, and they account for over half of the assignments. So it's a big part of the market. In the full program, the 3 1-hour sessions, we look at that database of 160 odd. I've worked on it for 15 years. It's been my Bible. And we look at it through which sectors the ISPs specialize in, which functions. Some of them actually specialize in transformation, which is not surprising given what we've just seen in the research. But we spend quite some time analyzing that database so that we can identify the 2 strategies. And the strategies are to identify all of those that specialize in your function or your sector. So, for example, there's about 25 to 30 that specialize in marketing, but then we select 5 that we work with, 5 that we work really closely with, that we establish a working relationship with based on mutuality and partnership. And those are our eyes and ears in the marketplace for those invisible assignments. So I talk about how best to work with Pimento and your other 4 ISPs, if that's what you want to do, what to expect from them, what they expect from us, how we brief them, what they need, how do we equip them to represent us in the marketplace to access those invisible assignments. So most of us work with up to 5, and as I say, it's about working in partnership rather than just being on a database and being pulled up occasionally by an ISP. So here's a quote from another ISP, and this demonstrates the type of ISPs that we want to work with. They say, we're out there every day talking to our clients, and we know our interims well. They're not just CVs in a database to us. When a brief comes up, we're able to identify the right person with the right expertise, interim proposition, with the right personality, personal brand. So, and I agree with that. That's exactly how we've developed this program, so that we've got that right messaging, so they have access to our expertise and a window to our personality, if you like. And I provide that database to the interim that works with me, and we take it down from an unmanageable 160 down to probably 25 maybe that might be relevant, most of which we can just upload our CV and register with, and for those 5 we're going to identify to 1 and 5 that we really want to work with closely, so they can be our, as I say, our eyes and ears in the marketplace for those invisible assignments. So 75% of assignments sourced through ISP consultants. So building a strong relationship with your, I'm going to call it top 5, is really important. You need to invest your time into it, and they will invest their time into the relationship as well. So they really know you extremely well. They can talk about you and your skill set to their clients. Not only have we got 75% of assignments sourced through an interim, but 54% won assignments from an ISP they've worked with in the past. So if your top 5 are really well briefed, they will go on placing you. So half assignments are coming from that top 5 we use. So being visible with your top 5 ISPs, briefing them properly, creating that relationship, that partnership based on mutuality, that's the way into this sector. However, although 77% of interims have sourced an assignment from an ISP, 55% have sourced an assignment from their own personal network. So we know that ISPs are essential, over half the market, but personal network, 40% of assignments. First assignments, it accounts for 30% of first assignments. So you have 2 channels. We have two strategies, 2 marketing strategies. One for the interim service providers and one for the personal network. Okay, let's start talking about that interim proposition and personal brand. We've seen how important it is to be able to equip our ISPs to be able to represent us and talk about us to their clients. So in the full program, we look at the research into the market, the research into the ISP sectors, that's numbers 1 and 2, just see, and you pull out the key learnings to direct us in drafting that interim proposition and personal brand. I provide what I consider to be best in class. We both draft them. That's some homework we do between session 1 and 2. You draft one, I draft one. We bring them together, we workshop them, and we craft those interim propositions and personal brands. And I show how it should be featured on CV. And there are some words that are obstacles, and they're C words. They all begin with C. They're obstacles to securing assignments, and I'll talk about those in a second. So it is essential, that interim proposition and personal brand, that messaging is essential for our partners, our ISPs, our top 5, to secure a meeting for us. But it's more than that. As marketeers, we know that we need consistency of messaging. So once you've got your interim proposition, that is your elevator pitch for networking events like Stephen had last night. It's the script for the ISPs. They hate me saying that, but it's true. It's how they represent us in their conversations with their clients. It features on the CV. It's used in networking. It's part of the briefing to the ISPs. It features in some way in your LinkedIn profile. So there's continuity between your CV and your LinkedIn profile. These are the three words: consultant, contractor, company. I would advise not to use those three words in your interim proposition or your CV. They are barriers to interim. For the sake of time, I won't cover it off now, but if anybody wants to ask me about those in the Q&A, then by all means do. Okay, so the messaging: interim proposition, personal brand, and interim title, oblique descriptor. Conventional titles from the permanent sector are not always used in the interim sector. I've been an interim marketing director, CMO, director of marketing, and brand director, but I've done the same thing. I've relaunched a brand, but I've got to fit into the business. If there's already a marketing director there, they're going to have to call me something else, which is fine. I can be flexible about that. So I use different titles. Some people use descriptors. Here's one, the ex-MD of Dairy Crest. He positions him, in terms of descriptor, as interim growth transformation director. Now, you probably wouldn't see that in permanent, but in interim, that's absolutely fine. It gives a demonstration of the breadth of experience that he has. So descriptors often used more than conventional titles. Interim proposition, as I said, it's about what you do. It's not who you are, it's about what you do. It's your skill set, your expertise, your experience, the sectors you work in, the function you provide, where you add value. And of course, as we've just seen, it's all based around transformation, business change, and turnaround. And then personal brand, that's your soft skills. That's the bit that sets you apart from others that have the similar sort of functionality. And it's quite often difficult to write the personal brand. It's about writing about ourselves. So I always say, have a look what other people say about you. Have a look what people say about you on LinkedIn recommendations. And they tend to talk about about who the individual is rather than what the individual does. So in a full ISP, full interim development program, we work through an interim proposition, personal brand, and then interim descriptor. And we make sure we absolutely nail those three. So we've got the messaging right before we go into the targeting. I also look at how we make an assignment really profitable, because about half of us bill less than 180 days a year, compared with permanent. I think that's 220 days working permanent. But that's by design. That's why we do it. We don't want to work at full time. I work 6 to 9 months on and 3 to 6 months off. I'm on a plane on June 11th, and I won't be back until September. That's the way that I like to run my interim career. Others have gaps of a month, but whatever it is, however we do it, we don't want to work on a full-time basis. Therefore, we need to be really profitable when we're on assignment. And this session number 4 is all about profitability. So in the full program, we look at earnings expectations. We look at how the day rates change between sector, the public and private sector. Finance pays better than retail, retail pays better than fashion, and so on. We look at the poor advice out there, and there is some very poor advice out there. So we step around that. We look at calculating day rates, what you can charge for, how you charge it, how you invoice it. We talk about IR35. We could spend a whole session on IR35, but I give my view on how you can work outside of IR35, because it's around 25 to 30% more profitable than working inside IR35. And we go through a full profitability plan. Obviously, I can't do that now, but I'll just touch on a few of those points. Firstly, day rates. There's a drop in 2008 with the crash. There's a drop in during the pandemic. It's increased by just 5.5% over the last 3 years. You can see it's sort of consistently risen over the last 15 years. to a new high of £811 on average. C-suite board level, we're looking somewhere around 1,200 to 1,800 plus, depending on the sector, depending on the assignment itself. 16% between 1,000 and 1,400, 8% over 1,500 a day. So I hope that sort of contextualizes it a little for you. But it is always negotiable. Be careful when you start that negotiation. You know, if Stephen and his team put you into a meeting with somebody, don't try and start negotiating the day rate then. That'll already be done. So you need to negotiate it before the meeting. But it does depend on your level of experience and your skill set fit. I'll give you an example. If I have a call from the CEO of Homebase this afternoon, says, David, I'd like you to relaunch the brand. And I say, yeah, you're desperately in need of it. And they'll say, what's your day rate? And I'll say, well, it starts with a 2. Because there is nobody else in the UK that has relaunched B&Q, Wix, Screwfix, and Focus. So my skill set is quite rare. So I know it sounds a little conceited. What I'm saying there is it is always negotiable depending on your skill set fit with the assignment objectives. Set up requirements. This is really for those people who are new into the market, and it's designed to make it profitable and efficient. I'm not going to go through it all. It's a short list of 10 items. For those of you who are interims, it will all be there. You'll have your limited company. It will be VAT. You have VAT registered. You'll use public liability, professional indemnity, and so on and so on. So that's just a sort of tick box. Let's talk about CV. I work with a lady called Carla Ferrero, who's the CV consultant at the Institute of Interim Managers, and we developed a new strategy for the interim CV. And it may sound a little sort of contentious, if you like, to say we base the strategy on the target market rather than the candidate's needs. So think about who's reading your CV. It's going to be CEOs, it's going to be HRDs, chief people officers, people who are short of time. They want to get through it quickly. When I'm recruiting for an interim marketing manager, for example, if I'm given 10 CVs, I just want to get through them really quickly. I'm looking for an excuse to put them in the bin so I can shortlist it down to maybe 2 or 3. So those are the sorts of people that are reading our CVs. So we've got to be aware of that when we're drafting our CV. Carla would say it's 10 seconds. The CEO of Career Toolbox says that it's under 7 seconds that a CV is looked at until the decision is beginning to be made whether they park it or progress it. So we've really got to get them quickly, and that's really the purpose of the interim proposition. So in the full program, we spend quite a lot of time on this. We look at the role of the CV just to get that meeting. We talk about how we feature the interim proposition, the personal brand. Talk about testimonials a lot. We talk about the strategy for the interim CV. It will be very different to your CV at the moment. I promise you that. But it is we tested it with clients back in September and with ISPs and clients, and it's top 1% of CVs. So I just want to pull out a couple of things. Firstly, the CV itself, you can't just take your permanent CV and put it into interim. That's not going to work. There's a lot of nonsense talked around the length of a CV. Yeah, I know it has to have brevity, but if you've done like me 17 assignments plus a full-time career, nearly 20 years, then I'm not going to squeeze that onto 2, 3, or not even 4 pages. Unless I have narrow margins and 8-point copy and no space, and it looks really, really difficult to get through. So I don't care how long it is, providing it's kind of easy on the eye and easy to read, easy to get the right messaging. So the CV's got to be reworked for the interim market. Case studies. I was astonished to see that 40% of interims put case studies on their CV. You don't need to do that. All it does is make it longer, pad it out, tell stories. Nobody's interested in the story. They just want to know where you're going to add value, where you're going to solve their problem. Keep the case studies for the meeting or the interview. We just provide enough information just to get that meeting. That's the role of the CV. just to get that meeting. And use testimonials. Use testimonials rather than case studies. They give an impartiality to a CV, which can never be impartial because we write our own. They often describe who you are rather than what you've done. The rest of the CV is very factual in terms of what you've done. And most importantly, it's the closest thing to a personal referral. And all the research shows that personal referrals are the best way to get an assignment or indeed a job. So we spend quite some time on the CV. I'll move quickly on to ISP database. As I've been working on this for 15 years, there's 164 of them when I checked this morning. It's quite comprehensive. It's a clunky old spreadsheet, but you can see you've got the ISPs there down the left-hand side alphabetically. They're color-coded, like every good Excel spreadsheet should be, depending on the award from the IIM, platinum, gold, silver, or bronze, market share, contact details, areas that they specialize in by sector, by function, click-throughs to the website, and whether they specialize in transformation. And we spend some time on that, taking it from 164 down to a short list of maybe 20, and then the 5 that you want to establish a working relationship with. And we talk about how to identify them, how to establish that working relationship, how to brief them, how to maintain that relationship, how to equip them to represent us in the marketplace. And then we develop it into a CRM marketing tool. You might recognize this. It's HubSpot. This is one of my clients, Gary. You can see on the left-hand side, you've got primary targets and secondary targets, i.e. his top 5, and then his broad list of maybe 20. It's, as you know, HubSpot, it's populated by their websites, it's populated by your email, and it manages your activation program. Okay, let's talk about LinkedIn. So with LinkedIn, as I mentioned earlier, the assignments are very rarely advertised, but it is our showcase. It's our shop window for both ISPs and clients to find us. I've been found 3 times and got an assignment offered to me 3 times, which I've taken because I was found on LinkedIn. So in the full program, we just talk about how to use LinkedIn, how to format it the best way. And I won't go through all of this just because of time, but let me just bring up a couple of examples. These are by no means sort of rare examples. This is quite representative. So we've got Jason and Rob there, and I hope Jason and Rob aren't on the call today. But I've taken out their surnames, check the innocent. But you can see that Jason there, interim finance director for Stratera Energy, and he's got a mountain behind. Maybe he thinks being a FD is like climbing a mountain. I don't know. But then you've got Rob down here. He's gone to the trouble of having open to work badged on his photograph, and then we've got him underneath his name. It says open to work, freelance. We don't know what he does. Well, he gets off planes in Saudi Arabia or Dubai or wherever it is. But they're not very good. They're not a showcase. They're not saying anything. What I do and I'm not saying mine is perfect by any means, but what I do is I treat it like an ad. So a strong image, a big headline, body copy, and call to action. So my images and the logos of the businesses I work with on an interim basis. And they're more likely to get an assignment, or at least an interest in the assignment than a mountain maybe. So pick an image that supports your interim proposition. Headline, you can see mine, David Moore, interim CMO. If you play around with it, you can actually get your title in there as well as your name. Body copy, there's 220 characters to choose from here, or to use rather. You could use it for your interim proposition, a pre-seed version of your interim proposition. Jason and Rob used about 25, 30 characters. There's another 200 there they can use to sell themselves if they're open to work. And then a call to action. And I say, find out how the program can help by looking at LinkedIn recommendations below. So classic structure of an ad, but it is our showcase, and it's to be found. So let's use it as such. Finally, number 9 is the marketing plan itself, or if you like, an activation strategy. So we'll have gone through the messaging, and we'll have designed that interim descriptor, that proposition, that personal brand, rework the interim CV, use testimonials, and rework the LinkedIn profile. So that's some messaging done. In terms of the targeting, well, I've identified all those relevant ISPs, maybe 20, maybe 25 that you can upload your CV and register with, but we then target the top 5, your top 5. So Pimento plus 4. And then we look at the approach to personal network and the approach to LinkedIn community. I can't go through this, not enough time. It's a pyramid, it could be a bullseye or a house or a temple. We've used them all probably, but it structures your approach when you're activating the program, when you're going into market, when you're being live, searching for to secure an assignment. Not only does it structure the approach, but it prioritizes it as well. So you're fishing where the fish are. And finally, it personalizes the messaging. It stops us, it disciplines us to not send out a standard email to everybody. I won't go through this, but if we meet up, I'll talk you through ripple effect, competitive marketplace, and situation alignment. Okay, with a couple of minutes to spare, that is the program. As I say, I shallow dived into it, 9 elements. The execs who've gone through it come out fully equipped, ready to launch into the sector with that interim descriptive proposition, personal brand, interim CV. They'll have their day rate calculation. All the setup pieces will be in place, not difficult, not expensive, not timely, but not using a lot of time, but easy to do. Have a LinkedIn profile strategy. They'll have their own CRM marketing tool for their ISPs and their personal network, and then a marketing strategy, the activation plan for those 3 channels: the ISP sector, the personal network, and the LinkedIn community. So just to finish the ad, if you like, the program, the full program, it is personalized, it's tailored to each individual. The sessions are one-to-one. For about an hour each over a couple of 3 weeks. The fee for the program is 1,250. I've got space to start in what's that, about 2 weeks. We commence on the 3rd of June. If you'd like to take the discussion on, then sorry if you can hear the noise outside. It's the gardeners in the hedge. But if you'd like to have a discussion with me, then we can take a 30-minute discovery call maybe next week. Fairly informal, but it allows me to understand a little bit more about your experience, expertise, and skill set and your career intentions. So if you'd like to take the program, then I can tailor it to that discovery call. Okay, so that's about it. I'm just under the 40 minutes, I think. I'll stop sharing this and open it to any questions you may have.
David, thank you very much indeed. Covered a lot of territory there very quickly, and some really interesting insights. And certainly, I was looking at my CV as you were talking about it, and if I were to want to get into this world again, it certainly is. My CV is completely inadequate, completely poorly designed in that respect. There's a few questions coming through. We've got one here from Guy. Guy, I don't know if you want to ask it personally. Come off mute if you'd like to.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned earlier the 3 C's and why they weren't a good idea.
Yeah.
And you didn't go into it. So it'd be interesting to hear why they're not a good idea.
Sure. The 3 C's, just to remind you, is consultancy, contractor, and company. So let's take them one by one. The research that I've done and talking to clients is that they feel that consultants do exactly that. They consult, they advise. They will make a great presentation, and they're quite expensive, some of the consultants, but they make the presentation, and then you'll get a deck that sort of somebody has to implement. In fact, I was on an event the other day, and a CEO said to me that he spent a lot of money and a lot of time with a consultant, and he said to the consultant, "That's great. Your recommendation is perfect. That's what we're going to do. Let's move on to the next stage." And the consultant said, "No, I don't do that." you're going to have to find somebody to implement it for me. He brought in a senior interim, and the interim didn't agree with what the consultant said. So it just went round in a circle. So the difference between consultant and interim is that interim will help identify the problem, develop the solution, and then lead the implementation of the solution. And that is the perception that businesses have, that an interim will take it all the way through to the implementation, whereas a consultant won't do the implementation. They'll just advise on what you should do. It's interesting that Pricewaterhouse are now actually moving more into implementation than pure consultancy. So that is a barrier. The next one is contractor, and the only reason I put that in there is that contractor tends to be more middle management, more junior. It tends to be on a fixed term contract. Therefore, you don't get access to the more senior assignments if you position yourself as a contractor, and they're not as profitable because they tend to be on fixed term contract, which tends to be lower than interim day rate. And the final one is company. And all the clients that I've spoken to have said to me that they're not interested in the company. They're interested in the individual, their skill set, their experience, their expertise. I have a company, it's called Quinn Interim Limited. I'm a Harlequin supporter, so I named it after Quinn's. And the only time a client ever sees that company name is on an invoice. So do have a limited company for your invoicing, because that will help get you outside of IR35, but don't have a company because you have a website, or a website, it goes on LinkedIn and so on and so on, because it's kind of a barrier. They just want the individual skills. They don't want a company where they look at it and say, well, am I going to get him, or am I going to get somebody else? And we've all had advertising agencies come to us. They do their pitch, they win the business, they've rolled in the big senior boys, and then we get the kids who actually implement it and run the campaign. That's not what the client wants. The client wants us as individuals, our skill set, our experience, our expertise. So yeah, those 3 C's, they are actually barriers as far as the interim clients are concerned for placing assignments.
Can I just ask a further question related to that? Because given the consultant, but there are businesses out there that really want strategy. They want a senior person like yourself to come in and look at the situation, assess what's required, and put together a strategy and a plan. But they may not necessarily want you to execute against that plan, and they may bring somebody in more junior, the head of marketing or marketing director, to actually do the executional side. So it's not always the case, is it? Sometimes you will be hired as a consultant and not necessarily an executional consultant, which is, I guess, the subtle difference.
Yeah, I think the executional consultant is the interim. Whenever I've gone into businesses, they want somebody to take over or lead the marketing department through that transformation program. So I'd have the marketing department working into me on that particular project, the relaunch. So yeah, in my experience, whilst the strategy is important, they have always asked me to implement it as well. So yeah, I guess there you could be an interim consultant, I suppose. But from what I understand from all my clients, they want somebody who can strategize and lead the implementation. Let's not actually do it ourselves, but have the marketing department. It's part of upskilling the marketing department as well, but having the marketing department actually drive that brand transformation program.
Thank you. The question from David about day rates, which kind of sort of fits neatly with my question about ISP average margin, because I guess the two go hand in glove. With the ISPs that you've noted, 160 odd, is there a average in terms of their take, or they do not disclose it? They agree a fee with you and they add their margin on top. How does that work?
Yeah, so an ISP will come to me and say, David, we've got home base who would like to see you next week, and their budget for this is X, 1,500 quid a day. As I say, firstly, I know that's negotiable, but let's say we agree on that 1,500. their contract will then be directly with Homebase, as will mine. So I will invoice Homebase the 1,500 quid a day, and then the ISP will invoice their commission on top. And their commission tends to be somewhere between 20 and 40% of my day rate. So yeah, that's how that works. The other point, just that now you've raised it, is that there is a lot of there's a lot of bad advice out there, and I think that poor advice comes from those ISPs that specialise in contractor rather than interim, i.e., middle management rather than senior management. And if you position yourself as a contractor, you'll probably be told that your day rate is your salary plus 30% divided by 220 days, and that's your day rate. If you do that, you're under invoicing by about a third. There's a much better way of arriving at your day rate, and it's a acknowledged and accepted rule of thumb, shall we say, by clients, ISPs, and interims. And that rule of thumb is that your day rate is 1% of the equivalent permanent salary. So if let's take 1,500 a day, or if that rolls up to 150,000 salary, if you take the first equation, add 30%, divide by 220, you'll get to £882. If you take the rule of thumb, 1% of equivalent salary, you get to 1,500. So there's a massive difference there. So whilst they aren't equations that we can just put into a calculator and say that's it, they are more points to open the negotiation with. But always open your negotiation based on the 1% rule, not salary plus 30% divided by 220. And all of my assignments, all 17 of them, have been based on the 1% rule of thumb rather than the more sort of contractor-led salary plus 30% divided by 220.
Okay, so rule is, do you take your last full-time job and your salary? It's the base salary, not the bonuses and
it is the base salary, and actually what I do is when I go in, I kind of get a feel of the type of company it is, what I understand what they're paying my peer group if I'm in at marketing director level. So it's a little bit of guesswork, but it's not that scientific, but it is based on 1% of the salary, not the package. Sort of the equivalent salary they would have to pay for somebody doing that role.
Thank you. Steve Lowe, you had a question, sir.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Yes, I was just interested to understand how personal brand websites play a role in conveying really the sort of DNA of you as a person, because there's more opportunity through a website to talk about your what you can do, what you can deliver to solve those challenges and issues that businesses have.
Yeah, I think having a personal website outlining your interim proposition, your personal brand, your experience, where you can add value, problems you've solved in the past and can do in the future. I think it's a valid route to go. I don't do it. I prefer to use the messaging that I've talked about, I've never gone to the trouble of having the website. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody if they're new into it and they're making a decision, shall I or shan't I have a personal website? I would say you don't need to. If it's something that you want to use, so that on LinkedIn, for example, there's a call to action that says go and have a look at my website. That's fine. I actually prefer to give them as little information as possible until I get in front of them, and then do my talking face to face rather than through a website. But if you already have one and invested one, I would certainly say don't take it down. I would say use that as a call to action, either through your LinkedIn profile or your CV, or indeed in your interim proposition. I think it can be useful, but I don't think it's necessary.
Sure. Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Okay. Well, 2 minutes to the end of the hour. I'd like to thank David for really interesting and insightful presentation today. Lots of things I think for us all to consider. If you're doing all this already, then obviously you are working the number of days you want at the rate you want. Well done. But if you feel you can learn more and feel that you know also other people who you work with or colleagues in similar spaces as yourself, then please don't hesitate to connect with David. We will send out a link afterwards, and also I think we recorded today's session, so if you want to share that with anyone who is an interim or looking to move into the interim world. I know there's a couple of people on today's call who have recently left big corporate roles and are looking now to go plural, so another term we didn't use today. Yeah, please by all means have a look at the video and equally to connect with David. And if you need any other advice or you need any support, then don't hesitate to give me a bell also, and I can point you in the right direction. So have a good day, interim or otherwise, and hope to see you all soon. And thanks once again, David.
Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.